Michael, could we get a roll call, please?
Alderman Bob Bauman. Here. Mr. Grady Crosby. Senator Alberta Darling. Mr. Mark Flaherty. Here. Representative Kaylin Haywood. Senator LaTanya Johnson. Senator LaTanya Johnson. Mr. James Cantor.
Here.
Secretary Blumenfeld. Present. Mr. Scott Mansky. Mr. Greg Marcus. Mayor Dennis McBride. Here. Alderman Jose Perez. Representative Joe Sanfilippo. Ms. Aicha Sawa. Here. Mr. Omar Sheikh. Here. Alderwoman Jocasta Zamaripa.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thanks. Before we get started on the agenda, I know Marty wanted to mention a couple things.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First, Mike Dixon, if you could just give a quick tutorial to the board so everyone knows how to properly work their microphones today.
Absolutely. So on these, you'll have a little button for talk. You press it. Green is good. Press it again. Red is off.
Thank you, Mike. Just a note of explanation. The last time we've had this many of our board members attend the meeting in person was March 6th, 2020. Subsequent to that meeting, a lot of things have happened, one of which was we were hosting the DNC, and we had purchased for staff as well as the board a number of DNC-specific memorabilia. This is the first time we've had everybody together to distribute them, so better late than never. Take them back to your office, do with them as you choose, but that explains why 2 years after the DNC you're getting the swag. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn to you.
All right, great, thank you. Next order of business is the approval of meeting minutes for March 18th, our full board meeting. Is there any discussion, any questions? If not, I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second, Senator Johnson.
All right, all in favor of approval of the meeting minutes for March 18th, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Next, for the next three items, actually, I'll turn it over to Steve Marsh for our financial update, a deposit resolution, and then our audit report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Today is a finance-heavy meeting covering a few topics, so we'll work to keep things tight today. Specifically, we'll be reviewing the year-to-date 22 financials, as well as the forecast for the remainder of the year. We'll review and ask for a vote on a resolution regarding check signing authorization. And finally, Baker Tilly will walk through their presentation of the 2021 audit report. And following any discussion, we'll ask the board to vote to approve the 21 report. But first, a quick update. On April 29th, a memo was distributed to the Finance and Governance Committees informing them that the district filed a voluntary EMA notice as a result of the district's bond trustee improperly transferring funds from one trust account to another. The good news is that no funds ever left the trust, and the error has since been corrected. The district has received no feedback from the markets or bondholders as a result of the filing, and no further action is required by management or the trustee, and certainly no action required by this board. If there's any questions on this matter, or if any of you would like a copy of the memo, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Marty on that. So moving on to the 22 financials, if you could turn to page 6 of your board packet, which is the income statement with column IDs A, B, C, and D at the top. You'll see a comparison of the district's year-to-date actuals through March compared to the year-to-date budget. Scrolling down to line 71, column C, you'll notice net income is better than budget by $246K, which is good news overall as we close out the first quarter. On the operating side of the business, you'll see in line 29, net operating income is down from budget by about $650K. Some of this variance is driven simply by a timing issue in which some events that were budgeted to occur in first quarter have been pushed back to later in the calendar year. However, we are also seeing the impact of rising operating costs. That's certainly evident in line 18, utilities, which is up almost 12%. And it's also very present in line number 4, net food and beverage revenue, although perhaps less noticeable. You can see we're down $95K in this category, approximately 15% through first quarter. Now, the gross food and beverage sales actually beat our budget by about 10%, but Levy is seeing increasing pricing pressure on labor and cost of goods sold, which is driving down the net number you see here. We're continuing to work with Levy, along with other third-party vendors, to control costs and minimize the reduction in profit margins. In fact, earlier this week, we received from Levy the April financial reports and saw marked improvement in the operating margins, and improvement that we hope to see the rest of the fiscal year. Moving down to tax revenues, line 35, you'll see March were better than budget by about $700K. Part of the year-to-date number here includes an estimate for the month of March in which we projected collections to come in 3% better than budget. Earlier this week, we received the actual results for the month of March, and they exceeded our projections by 25%. Certainly good news and consistent with the favorable results reported in January and February. Bucks District ticket surcharge revenue is up relative to budget, driven by strong ticket sales at Fiserv Forum in February for their Disney on Ice shows, as well as in March for the NCAA tournament games. Moving down to non-operating expenses, a lot of puts and takes across these categories, as is typical this time of year. Note the Visit Milwaukee expense, line 50, is up $233K relative to budget. Remember, Visit's 22 expense is driven largely by 21 tax revenues. When we set the budget for this expense in late September of 21, we were still cautious on where 21 tax revenues would end. As you all know, the fourth quarter, blew our projections out of the water, which caused a subsequent increase in the payment due Visit. While it's not budgeted for, the increase in expense isn't alarming to management, and it was more than offset by the increase in tax revenue collections from prior year. The next page of your packet, page 7, is a comparison of our annual budget to our annual forecast. Again, scrolling down to line 71, column C, you can see we expect to beat our budget at year-end by $570K. We do expect net income from operations to improve over the next 3 quarters. You can see line 29 that the net income variance to budget is projected to be right now a negative $192K, which is a marked improvement from the year-to-date variance to budget of a negative $650 noted on the previous page. Part of this improvement is driven by the forecasted projections for the Beyond Monet event, which was unbudgeted for and is occurring in our exhibit hall beginning in October. We've also included in our forecast a $500,000 grant the district received in April through the SBA's SVOG grant program. And this is part of line 13 of your income statement. This was a supplemental award that the district was eligible for and was in addition to the monies the district received through that same grant program last fiscal year. As for tax revenues, line 35, we're forecasting only a slight increase relative to budget, 3% for the remainder of the year. In our view, this is probably a conservative estimate right now, and our hope is that come the August board meeting, we can show stronger growth than what we're currently projecting. Non-operating expenses, again, you can see the visit expense variance, line 50, is going to continue to grow relative to budget throughout the year, again, due to that unexpected boost in fourth quarter tax collections. There's certainly some opportunity here to beat budget more significantly, and there's also risk, as there always is this time of year, and management will continue to monitor and adapt its plan moving forward. As for our cash exhibits, which are pages 9 and 10 of your packets, both the restricted and unrestricted cash positions remain in a relatively healthy state, and management has no concerns about its ability to meet its continuing debt or operational obligations over the next 12 months. Mr. Chairman, that's my report on 22. Great. Are there any questions?
With that, move on to the next
Yeah.
topic.
Page 11 of your packet today is a resolution that gives authority to certain members of the management team to sign checks. The last time the board passed a check signing resolution was September of 2018, And a copy of that resolution for your reference is page 12 of your packet. It's the next page. Today, management is simply seeking to remove, as an authorized check signer, the VP of Sports and Entertainment, a position that has since been eliminated at the district, and replace it with the position of Vice President and General Manager. Management is also seeking approval to grant such check signing authority moving forward without having to cause a board vote, provided such person receiving that authority is a vice president and that the Finance Committee has been advised when such authority is granted. Mr. Chairman, this resolution is really administrative in its nature and allows management to clean up prior authorizations no longer needed, and also add to that authorization list as warranted by our current operations. We'd be happy to entertain any questions from the board if there are any.
Are there any questions on this cleanup of an administrative issue? If not, I would seek a motion to approve from the board to remove the Vice President of Sports and Entertainment and add the General Manager to the signing resolution.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so as a practical matter, my counsel, we are seeking approval of Resolution 22001. So do we have a motion for approval on that? Which is what we just voted on, but this is
So
read it
moved.
into the record. Do we have a second? Yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. All right, I think, Steve, now you're going to introduce the audit report.
That's right.
Correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly will be providing to the board in just a moment a presentation regarding the district's 21 financial performance. The overall financial results should not be surprising, as they are consistent with the updates that Marty and I have provided to the board over the past 15 months. Wendy presented to the Finance Committee last Thursday, and the Finance Committee voted affirmatively to recommend today that the full board adopt the 21 financial statements. So at the conclusion of Wendy's presentation, and subject to any discussion from the board, management will ask the board to vote on approving those statements. But before Wendy dives into her presentation, I want to hand the floor over to Marty for a quick comment regarding a subsequent event that's described in the footnotes of the financial statements.
Thank you, Steve. Before doing so, I just would like to acknowledge and welcome Common Council President Jose Perez. Joins us today for the first time and is now an official member of the WCD Board, so welcome. Thank you. As Steve has indicated, Wendy's about to give us the 2021 audit report, but I wanted just to give a little bit of clarification to a term that's buried. I think it's around page 51, not buried, but identified around page 51 of the audit report. It's called the subsequent event. Since the board last met in March, ICON and we began to see a reoccurring theme of responses to the bid packages for the expansion coming in significantly higher than we had originally anticipated due to far greater increases in material escalation and inflation than we could have seen in 2020. With the final bid package being issued the middle of next month, we identified the August board meeting as when we would have enough definitive information to update the board on any delta between the expansion budget and what we expect the actual costs to be. For informational purposes, we share this information with Baker Tilly, who believed that it should be identified in the 2021 audit as a subsequent event, although it has no bearing on the 2021 financials. In an abbreviated format, this information was shared with Board Chairman Cantor, Scott, Aicha, Greg, and Bob of the Finance and Personnel Committee, and then with Grady, Latanya, and Kalen of the Governance Committee. As part of my CEO report later this morning, following the audit report, I will go into further detail, but wanted to highlight this and assure you more information will be coming later in the meeting. And with that.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, I am Wendy Younger, partner with Baker Tilly, the individual responsible for the district's audit. Included in your packet is a summary document that I will use to go through both the audited financial statement draft and the reporting and insights document draft that you also have within your packet. The agenda, we're going to go over the objective of the audit and the intended opinion that it is going to be issued, go through some very high-level financial statement highlights, briefly talk about the reporting and insights document, and then conclude with an update on where we are at with the Levy project. If at any point during the presentation you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll do my best to address those. So the objective of the audit was to render an opinion on the financial statements of the district. Included in your packets is a draft opinion. It is a clean, unmodified opinion, highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditors. That clean, unmodified opinion means that the information contained within the audited statements is believed to be materially accurate. All disclosures that are required to be included have been included. Accounting principles have been consistently applied, and that generally accepted accounting principles had been adhered to. One item that I do want to just draw your attention to is included in that draft auditor opinion is an emphasis of matters paragraph highlighting the going concern disclosure that is continuing in 2021 in your audited statements. That is in footnote 16. Again, relatively consistent verbiage that's been included in the past, but again, updated for current situations. So just want to mention that. Some high-level financial information. The next three slides highlight the statement of net position, the income statement, and high-level cash flow. Couple items to note. When looking at the statement of net position or the balance sheet for the district, looking at that in comparison of 2021 to 2020, you'll note your assets saw a relatively consistent fluctuation, down a little bit, roughly $3 million over 2020. Keep in mind that during 2021, the district had various activities, obviously a very large construction project going on. You had borrowed in 2020 to accomplish that project, so funds were utilized in 2021 to make payments on that construction project. Overall, the district saw a $17 million decrease in cash, but you also saw an increase in your capital assets. So your construction in progress account went up by $29 million, but you also have related depreciation on the various capital assets of the district. That's an offsetting $18 million. So again, the assets stayed relatively consistent. When you look at your liability section, you'll note your current liabilities went up approximately $11 million. A large portion of that is the amounts due on construction that existed as of 12/31. Roughly $7 million of invoices were due and payable at that point in time for services rendered. Also included in that current liability section is the movement of $6 million of current liability related to your debt obligation. So that's the amount that's due in 2022 and therefore looked at as current. You'll note the long-term liability section, very consistent with the previous year. One thing I will also remind you, during 2021, the district borrowed $23.6 million. So there's $23.6 million of new debt. You utilize those monies to pay down previous issued debt from 2013. So essentially a wash. You borrowed the money, you paid off the old debt. You also paid down your normal and customary principal payments during the year of roughly $6.1 million. The next slide is your income statement. This is the results of operations. Again, comparing 21 to 2020, you'll note your operating revenues saw a nice uptick over 2020. Main reasons for that, your commission on concession sales was up $1.4 million over the previous year. You also had the profit from the Van Gogh exhibit. That was $1.2 million that was recognized during 2021. And then you also received some additional reimbursement through the state for your unemployment compensation credit of $519,000. Your operating expenses, you'll note, is a decrease over the previous year, roughly $4.8 million. That decrease relates to the amount, Steve mentioned earlier how the payments to Visit Milwaukee fluctuate based on income, so that expense is down over the previous year due to that decrease in revenue that the district saw. In your non-operating income section, you'll see a nice increase in the tax revenue. That's your room tax and food and beverage, car rental tax revenue that the district receives, so a $15 million increase there. But likewise, within your interest expense category, you saw a $13 million increase. Again, you're now making interest payment on that borrowing that was done for the construction. So overall, for 2021, the district saw a $18 million decrease in its net position compared to a $30 million decrease in the previous year. This last financial slide just highlights the cash flows. The activity that I've mentioned related to the previous two slides really explain the fluctuation, and as I noted earlier, the district saw a $17 million decrease overall in its cash position, mainly due to the fluctuation or the payments that were made related to construction, the $22 million. From an operating standpoint, if you look at the top two portions of that table, you'll note an $11 million net outflow for operating activities, but then that is quickly reimbursed with the $11.9 million of tax revenue. On this next slide, this is the reporting and insights document, just a highlight of that. That is also included in your packet. That document we issue as part of the audit process. We are required under our standards to have normal and customary communication with you, the board of the district. Included in that report is that communication. A couple items to draw your attention to within that report. We continue to communicate a material weakness related to the fact that we become part of the internal control structure for the district. We prepare the audited statements that you have before you in draft format. We also had a few material journal entries as part of the audit process. Those journal entries are similar to what we've had in the past related to the recording of the GASB 68 and 75. That's your pension and OPEB obligations. We also had some audit entries this year related to accounts payable and the booking for the construction project. And that was essentially due to timing of when those invoices are received by the district. Also included in that report, other comments and recommendations. We talked in a bit of detail at the Finance Committee meeting, so I won't go into more detail here, but there is a new governmental accounting standard, GASB 87, that will be effective for the district for 2022. A very involved standard that will require changes in how leases are accounting for. So have already spoke with management and reminding them of the work that needs to be done to implement that on time as required. Again, a required communication section that is ours as your auditors. Again, standard and customary information included in there. Nothing I need to draw your attention to. Just reminding there is a section in there that highlights the various estimates that are included within the district's financial statements. There are several, and some of them are large, depreciation being one of those. Lastly, the management representation letter, that will be a document that is on district letterhead and representations that are made to us by management as part of the audit process, and that will be included in a final form upon approval today. One other item I want to note, in addition to the levy item that's on the next page, I do just want to let the board know that after our Finance Committee on last week Thursday, in talking with Steve, the district will be required to have a single audit for 2021. So there will be an additional report that will come out. The district, Steve mentioned there was an additional $500,000 received in 2022. There was roughly $900,000, almost $1 million that was received in 2021. After some discussions with the grantor of that grant, there is going to be a single audit required. So we'll work with Steve over the next month or so to get that issued and completed. On the last slide, again, as part of our agreement with the district, we are required to do some agreed upon procedures work related to levy and the amounts that are paid over to the district. That work has yet to be completed. Due to some turnover within that area, the information that we needed to be able to do that and issue our report has yet to be available. So we will continue to work with management, and we'll bring that to the board upon completion. On the last slide, I have included my email address, my direct line. Happy to talk with any of you in more detail, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions you might have currently.
Are there any questions for Wendy? Great. Very thorough. As always, thanks, Wendy. With that, I know we will need to have a vote for the approval of the audit report as presented, so we have a motion to approve. Thank you. Got it, and a second. All in favor of approval of the audit report?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The audit report is approved. Thanks again, Wendy. And now, Marty, CEO report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pick up on the subsequent event that I referenced earlier. The expansion project of $420 million was presented to and subsequently approved by the board in April of 2020, subject to the development of an acceptable financing plan. Within the budget, we had included an appropriate amount of construction cost contingency of 8.5%. This was included to cover potential impacts during our bidding process and design period, such as design evolution and material escalation. Not knowing what was ahead with the pandemic nor the impacts it would have on material costs, we felt good about this contingency amount. To build a project, there are a total of 5 bid packages. Bid package 1 was for site demolition and was awarded in June of 2021. Bid package 2 was for the structure and awarded in January of 2022. Bid package 3 was for the building enclosure, awarded in February of 2022. Bid package 4 was for the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, awarded in May of 2022. Bid package 5 is for interiors and will be issued mid-June and will be awarded in late July. Over the past year and a half, the construction industry is experiencing 10 to 15% increases in costs. The impacts of our bids received during the first 4 bid packages has exceeded the 8.5% construction cost contingency held within the budget, with our latest impact being the MEP bids. The following scopes of work saw the highest percentage of cost increases and are all heavily material-based. Those are concrete, steel, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and fire protection. Not everything has increased through the bidding period. Some scopes of work to date have reduced in cost, such as demolition, site utilities, exterior wall enclosures, and food service equipment. Throughout the past 18 months, we have been reviewing all of the bids and reducing costs by thoughtfully value engineering design specifications without compromising programming nor eliminating important facility enhancements. The team will continue their value engineering efforts through the balance of the bidding and construction periods. After we receive the bids for the final bid package, there is likely to be a variance between the project funded amount and cost to deliver the fully designed project. We're exploring 3 different paths for a solution to offset these variances. First, we've submitted 19 elements of the expansion for each one's consideration for a federal grant through the Departments of Energy and Agriculture. We should have a response to our submissions by the end of July. Second, working with Baird Financial Services and Morgan Stanley, we're investigating the potential of issuing additional bonds or other forms of financing. And lastly, we're developing a plan to reduce project costs by eliminating scope from the project, this option being the very last we would like to have to consider. I bring this to your attention today as I expect the project team to identify the delta between the funded project amount and the updated costs by the end of July, at which time we will determine which of the corrective measure or combination of measures we believe are appropriate to pursue. Once this has been developed and fully vetted, we will come to the board at the August board meeting with a breakdown of the savings and increases to the construction project, a recommendation on next steps, and seek your approval to move accordingly. Any questions on this thus far?
Could you just give us a little bit of a notion about what reduced scope might mean? I mean, this is a once-in-a-generation project we're taking on, so I think you correctly said this is the last option to be considered, but I'm a little concerned about that.
Sure. Happy to do so. Happy to share that with you, not implement that option. Reductions in scope, the first thing, and probably putting emotion and what we've represented aside, would not to be any of the interior modifications to the existing south building, carpeting, FF&E, wayfinding, lighting. You may recall, Mayor McBride, that throughout the project, one of the things that's been very important to us in presenting the scope was that those attending an event would have a seamless experience traversing from the north and south buildings. There is a significant cost to make those modifications, and by eliminating those costs, it would have no impact on us being able to complete the north expansion in the manner in which it's been designed. We truly believe between options 1 and 2, we're going to be able to come to the board with continued value engineering and present to you what we're facing with and a solution that will not require us to pursue option 3. But if there are no other funds available and costs continue to increase, that will be the only viable solution. So it's one we have to pursue, but I'm very optimistic based upon what we're seeing in other fronts that we will be able to complete this without having to do so.
All right, so we're just talking about interior improvements to the south building and not to the size, shape, whatever of the north?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. We're not, the ballroom would be intact, the meeting rooms would be intact, correct. Nothing that would stop us from opening the north building.
Are there any other questions for Marty on that? Thank you, Mayor McBride.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on, as Steve has indicated, we're forecasting to be slightly ahead of budget for the year. And please understand that while doing so, we will continue to endeavor to be aggressive in adding additional event activity and be dogged about controlling all of our costs. On the sports side, our indoor soccer team, the Wave, concluded their season on April 7th with a home playoff loss to the eventual MASL League champion, the San Diego Sockers. We had a one-year deal with the Wave, and we are optimistic that a new deal will be reached with them to continue playing games in the arena for the 22-23 season. Our own Admirals are in the playoffs. Currently, they won the second round of the playoffs, defeating Manitoba in a Game 5 of a best-of-5 series, and start the next round in Chicago on Saturday against Chicago. On the entertainment side, this past weekend, the district hosted the Circus for the first time since 2019, and we're going to be entering in discussions with them about dates for next year in the next week or so. We also hosted this past Sunday a sold-out comedy show in the Miller High Life Theater, which capped off an incredibly busy run of entertainment in the theater for the past 5 months of this year. Still to come, Smokey Robinson will perform on the theater June 2nd, while the UWM Panther Arena will be hosting our second televised AEW wrestling show on June 22nd, and Jack White on August 16th. Since we executed the booking agreement with the Pabst Theater Group in March, they have confirmed 10 shows between August and the end of this year, and 3 for early 2023. They are holding dates for an additional 25 shows through the late spring of next year, and well on their way to surpassing the annual minimum guarantee of 30 shows. A shout out to Katie Mullins, our box office director, and her staff for their efforts in selling tickets to all of our recent shows and for spearheading the transition to the Pabst Theater Group's ticketing system into the Miller High Life Theater's box office. As Steve mentioned, Beyond Monet is now on sale with advanced ticket sales pacing along with our initial projections. Steve Harms, our Vice President of Corporate Partnerships, sold the presenting sponsorships to Beyond Monet to the We Energies Foundation, a really terrific sale and not something we would have been able to achieve had Steve not joined our organization. Under Megan Setman's leadership, the sales department has already sold a private, immersive experience and hospitality reception to a client that was already booked to use the convention center during the Beyond Monet run on a date that otherwise would have had us having the Beyond Monet show dark. As we changed with the Beyond Van Gogh show, the facility is, the exhibit is not running on Monday and Tuesdays except during holiday weeks. So the client was in the building, the show would have been dark. They've got a private event, so we're generating income off of that when it otherwise would have been dark for the day. On the meetings and convention side, since our board last met, we've been really busy and almost as busy as pre-pandemic levels. We saw 2 international events come through our building. In April, the district hosted the Cheese Expo, which included over 300 exhibits and 4,000 attendees. Earlier this month, the district hosted the Wire Show for the first time since 2019, an otherwise annual event. This year's show attracted 158 exhibitors, and the next 2 points are really encouraging for business to Milwaukee. 1,500 of the attendees were from the United States. 800 were international attendees. So it's great to see that the international attendees are feeling confident to travel, able to travel, and coming to our facility and to the market. To stay with the international theme, the district will be hosting the International Association of Chiefs of Police next week, which is expected to draw 1,000 attendees and to generate 1,500 room nights for local hotels. On the subject of room nights, as of May 3rd, our partners at Visit Milwaukee have already exceeded their annual pace target for the hotel rooms booked for FY 2022. This year, their year-end goal is 156,209 room nights. They already have committed 162,608 room nights on the books for the year. This is certainly encouraging news as it pertains to hotel tax revenue collections for the remainder of the year. District also played host to Midwest Gaming, a public show in which 12,000 attendees converged on downtown Milwaukee and visited the Wisconsin Center. And since we last met, the district has also played host to numerous volleyball, basketball, and dance competitions across its 3 buildings. Our sales team at Visit Milwaukee are working hard to maximize usage of our buildings every way they can. You may recall that last month I sent out a notice that we were seeking to hire a new Vice President of Human Resources. We have since hired Nyla Tuckson for that position starting June 20th. Nyla and I worked together for 6 years at Explore St. Louis, St. Louis's Convention and Visitors Bureau, and operator of the America Center Convention Complex and Edward Jones Dome. She brings over 20 years of hands-on venue human resources experiences to our organization, and really expect her to do great things here for us. We, along with Legends, continue to be active in discussions for the naming rights of the convention center with 2 organizations. Each of these organizations has already hired their own third party to evaluate the elements of the naming rights package, and each continues to be fully engaged in these discussions. I'm optimistic that we will be able to provide you with some details on this at our August board meeting. In January, I shared with the board my concern that Live Nation's 2 entertainment venues that were being considered on the Summerfest grounds could impact the viability of our Miller High Life Theater. For those of you not based in Milwaukee, last week Live Nation and Summerfest announced the project was no longer being considered for the Summerfest property, and that Live Nation was pursuing to use a portion of the former Bradley Center lot owned by the Bucks. My concern of the impact this would have on the Miller High Life Theater is even greater should it be built on this location. I'd like to bring another matter about the expansion to your attention before Mike Abrams from ICON provides his overall update. Towards the end of March, during initial concrete foundation layout, construction crews discovered an error in the new building layout dimensions performed by the on-site survey crews, which caused some of the 2,700 piles to be placed in the wrong location. I'd like to have Mike Abrams, our owner's rep on the project, explain the situation. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Marty. Yeah, I just want to provide a little bit more detail in case anyone has heard of the issue over the past few weeks out in the community. Things are back on track, by the way, and looking positive. Our steel piles, which we've been talking about probably for the last 5 months or so since we started drilling piles in the ground in October. The piles, when they're drilled in the ground, are allowed during installation to have a few inches of tolerance being off from their location. This is fairly common in the industry, as there are many like underground obstructions when you're drilling piles. Sometimes up to 2 to 4 inches or so of allowable tolerance. However, due to an initial surveying error, a larger percentage than normal were placed in the ground over the allowable tolerances, and these areas have been and currently are still being evaluated by our design team. This, as Marty mentioned, this was about the end of last week of March or so. Since then, our design team and our entire project team evaluated several possible options to remedy the issue and the misplacement. As a result, to date, we are looking at adding some additional piles around the project site and also adding to some of the pile cap, the concrete caps that sit on top of the piles, adding to those as well. So during the evaluation period, the crews were paused on starting, so we were starting concrete foundations when this issue was discovered in early April. Crews were paused on continuing with these foundations until the redesigned documents were developed and received. From about the middle of April and then through the end of this month of May, the design teams have and will continue to issue a series of change documents, giving the construction crews the green light to proceed with new foundation work. Work commenced early in May with concrete foundations. And you can see if you drove in today, there's a lot of action with cement trucks out on the job site this morning and have been for the past several weeks. Any costs associated with this issue are being tracked separately and submitted directly to the construction manager, Gilbane Smith, for their payment. The WCD is not responsible for any incremental costs required to correct the error, including the recovery of time. Gilbane Smith is also currently working on a recovery schedule plan to make up the lost, what we think is possibly about 5 to 6 weeks on the overall schedule. After all design impacts are known by the end of May, this recovery schedule will be issued, which will document their plan on how to recover these lost days and maintain the same final completion date as we have now. So I just want to provide a little bit more detail on that if anybody has any questions, specific questions pertaining.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. What is the completion date at this point? Refresh our recollection.
Yeah, it's March 22nd of 2024.
Okay, and you see no risks of falling off that schedule?
No, we've been involved with, well, first of all, this issue came early in the project, which allows us, we have a lot of time from now to completion day to make up these days. The concentration on making up the days will be focused in the next 8 to 10 months during concrete and steel activities. That's when we have the most amount of crew members on site. Our construction manager has already started planning the recovery schedule. We've been in those meetings, been part of that, and they do have a plan on how to make up those days. We feel confident we're going to maintain that same.
So that March date is the date you turn the property over to the Wisconsin Center District?
Correct. That's a substantial completion date.
Okay. because other projects have run into some delays, that the Couture in particular has fallen off substantially from their original construction schedule. So you don't anticipate any of those problems arising?
No.
Okay. And a question, are we still pursuing the Democratic Convention, or have we abandoned that effort?
I am not aware of any further discussions with the Democratic National Convention since, I want to say, 6 months ago, when then Mayor Barrett responded to a letter, but we have not received, to my knowledge, even a bid packet from the DNC.
Have they gone out, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, they have not gone out. One last thing about your prior question, Alderman Bauman. While we have not announced this, if you will, in a formal announcement, working with Icahn and Gilbane with the March delivery of the project, our first event is contracted to move in starting May 8th. So that's the first event. While the property will be delivered to us end of March, we have to commission all the systems, train the staff. So the first actual public event is anticipated to be the first week of May.
How do you handle that situation with an unbuilt building? What if there is a substantial delay? I mean, heaven forbid, what happens if the tower crane collapses and you lose a year? As happened at Miller Park, I might add. I mean, this is not beyond the realm of possibility.
Sure.
Highly, highly rare, but it's not impossible. How are contracts handled for?
That would be a force majeure action, and we would react and cover it either both through insurance and ability to get out of the contract, not under the contracts, with exhibitors. Our first option would be to locate them either to the south side of the building or somewhere else in Milwaukee.
Okay.
Mike? Are there any monetary penalties if they don't deliver the building on time? And substantial completion in a contractor's eyes is a lot different than substantial completion in the building owner's eyes.
Yes, good question, and yes, there are monetary penalties built into their contract. It's a series of ranges of costs after a certain amount of time after substantial completion, and they do increase as days or weeks increase past that date.
There's a painful financial penalty if they don't deliver it on time.
In whose opinion, I've had this happen, and I've had a hotel delivered without carpet and everything like that. We're complete. So it's a slippery slope.
Thank you. You answered the question that I think was on all of our minds, which is who's paying for this screw-up. But I just want to be clear in my own head about the delays. With the pace of inflation right now, a 5 to 6 week delay could create a lot of expense. Now you're talking about making sure that things are completed by the expected completion date, but who is covering any overruns based on the delay there? Would it be Gilbane?
Correct. This is all going, Gilbane Smith is tracking all costs separately outside the budget. We're monitoring those costs to make sure none of those costs are invoiced or we're not going to see any of those costs hit our invoicing for this project. So yes, they're 100% responsible for it. Insurance companies of the parties involved have all been contacted, and it's going to go run through the insurance companies.
All right, thank you.
And Mayor McBride, the delay, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, primarily related to the pouring of the concrete. We have not delayed the review and then awarding of any of the bid packs that do have locked-in pricing. So we're in pretty good shape to address your concern, Mayor McBride.
Just one more question along those lines. Where would you relocate the Republican National Convention to if the building wasn't ready?
I've not contemplated that scenario.
It's only a 4-month window. It's only a 4-month cushion.
I have full confidence in our team to deliver the building to us by the end of March and have the May 8th building event activity be executed.
Okay.
Just real briefly, I want to address, Scott Mansky has also joined Michael for our purposes of roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, thank you for your assistance with that. Board Chair Cantor, that concludes the CEO report. And if I may, I'd like to have Mike Abrams stay up there and give the board an update on the project, aside from these other issues that we've discussed.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. All right, so quick project update. See some this site picture, by the way, was from yesterday. I believe there might be a video or a fly-through here in a few minutes as well. Just quick project updates, general project updates and construction updates. Design meetings, we are still in design meeting mode. We're wrapping those up in the next couple of weeks with our design partner UA and TVS, concentrating in the next few weeks on finalizing our site amenities, exterior amenities, interior finishes, and our furniture, fixtures, and equipment detailing. Mid-June, we're going to be complete with our final design document, as Marty mentioned, for the interiors package, which is the last set of construction documents that'll be going out for bid. We expect those bids to come back in late July or first week of August. We also have a public project info session scheduled for May 25th for this bid package and any vendors that are interested in learning what's going to be in that bid package. We are currently onboarding several key subcontractors right now: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and low voltage vendors. And we, of course, we're continuing, as we have from the onset of this project, to look at value analysis across the board. Now we have subcontractors, key subcontractors on board. We can dig in even further with certain scopes. Recently, we hired a artwork procurement project management company called Public Art Services. They've teamed up with a local art organization called Milwaukee Artist Resource Network. We are partnering with them and can utilize the knowledge that they have locally of local artists, and also utilize their facility to hold outreach events for local artists. The WCD has also hired Arch Electric to provide our solar panel design and installation, and we're working through final locations and sizing of that system. And earlier this week, we sent out an RFP for our exterior LED video boards. Board vendors, and also starting to develop the balance of our RFPs for our furniture, fixtures, and equipment package, which should go out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Construction update, good progress in the last couple of weeks with the start of concrete foundations. You can see in the background a large tower crane got placed a few weeks ago. We have another tower crane. They're actually pouring the base this morning, which is on the east side. So we have 2 tower cranes that'll be out there for the next year or so. One is about 250 feet off the ground, and the second one's going to be roughly 300 feet off the ground. One of our largest concrete pours on this north side along Kilbourne occurred a couple of weeks ago. It was about a 450 cubic yard pour. It's a big, thick foundation pour for the on-site storm water retention that we're holding on the project site. As a reminder, the stormwater collection system diverts stormwater from entering the city's stormwater system. So that was a nice event a couple of weeks ago, had media coverage on that. And that is one of our largest foundation pours. It was one of the first ones and largest ones. So everything went very well with that. And we also continue with our site utilities, plumbing, underground plumbing, and our utility work around the project. We're going to put our matrix on here, some of our stats that we showed a couple of months ago at the board meeting, quick safety update, and we have 95 workers on site on average between 5 trades, utilities, piles, our excavator, concrete, and underground plumbing trades. That's going to ramp up to probably about 200 plus in the next couple of weeks as the concrete foundation work increases. To date, we have 96,550 labor hours. We have no lost time incidences on site. So everything's going very well with safety. And in fact, a few weeks ago, there was another great event on the project site with a partnership between OSHA and Gilbane Smith. So partnering on our specific project, it's a proactive approach to safety, inviting OSHA on site more regularly, and just integrating with their program. And it was a formal signing of that relationship, which occurred a few weeks ago. Contracting status, we have 20 subcontractors under contract. We're pending a couple contracts right now with fire protection and food service vendors. We believe we've got about another 10 or 15 more to get under contract. Upcoming milestones, June, early June, the second tower crane for the east side will be placed. We're going to look at placing our first elevated concrete deck towards the end of June. We Energies, we've been working with them over the past 6 months. Their crews are scheduled mid to late June to start the big steam line installation, which comes in off of Wells. And as you guys have seen, Wells Street has been closed both directions. We are up in the soffit area, removing everything above that soffit. In works is the steel connection bridge that will go over Wells, that will connect the existing center to the north expansion. And also our steel erection, we're planning on an August start date. A couple of charts here. We're just going to track cubic yards on the project. We've placed currently about 2,000 cubic yards. And on the right side, we are currently around 11% build on the project to date. And last, to finish up, just a quick diversity and inclusion update. We did receive a draft report from our inclusion consultants, which combines our business and workforce inclusion for the first quarter of 2022. Our business inclusion, which has a 31% goal, we far have exceeded that, and we are currently at 39%. These are construction and professional service contracts that have been executed. Our workforce inclusion has a 31% goal. We're currently at 24%. We have increased this since our last board meeting update a couple of percentages. So we're starting to see the trend increase on workforce. Our RPP goal of 40%, we've increased that over the past couple of months. We're currently at 33%. And our targeted special impact area goal of 25, we're currently at 21%. We are not concerned about some of the labor, workforce, and RPP numbers to date. These underperformances right now in the workforce and some on the MBE on the business inclusion are not indicative of inclusion efforts to date. They are, however, a function of timing of award of construction contracts and labor that is on site. The most significant number of MBE firms really operate in the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and finished trade categories, in which the Q1 report was not inclusive of. So we'll see these numbers rise throughout the project and within our next quarterly report. So that wraps up our expansion update. If anybody has any questions, I'll stay up here.
Are there any questions for Mike? Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. One thing before I move on, and it just came to me as Mike was talking about the stormwater trap. We are completely immersed in this project, as you would expect us to be. And there are three pillars that we developed before we ever engaged in this project of what this was going to mean. And that was economic impact to the city and region, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sustainability. And I was out there when they were doing the pour for the trap, and this water runoff trap is something that is part of our sustainability commitment, and I know something that's very important to Alderman Bauman and things that he and I spoke about 2 years ago. The rain would have come down on our parking lot and immediately gone into the city's infrastructure without this project. With this project, we've taken the opportunity to build these three massive water traps that will relieve the city to some degree of that immediate collection of water right into their sewer system and then potentially cause an overflow into the lake. So I just want to highlight that this is something that in a couple of weeks will be covered with dirt you're not going to see, but it's a big design commitment and also a big financial commitment to what's important to us in making sure that the project is built as a sustainable project. One last thing on the expansion for this meeting, and our focus of the project isn't just limited, but our inclusion focus of this project isn't limited to just the workforce and professional services. On Wednesday of this week, we hosted our second school site visit with MPS students from Carmen High School of Science and Technology. Alicia Dupes from Gilbane and Sarah Mayo from our team coordinated the visit to include representatives from EUA, Gilbane, and a variety of trades to talk to students about their post-high school options in construction. Gilbane's dedicated drone operator was on site and sent this video back to the students after the event. I know it's hard to conceptualize what's going on behind the curtain and the screens of the construction fence, so I wanted to share it with you to give you an almost real-time look at what the job site is. This video is from Wednesday. At the end of 2018, we engaged Kane Communications to develop and execute our first employee engagement survey. From the results, we developed a program that addressed many of the employees' issues and was the catalyst for the creation of our CEO vision and the Be Bold, Be Proud, Be Experience-Obsessed campaign. The intent was that a year following the rollout of BPX, we would re-engage the staff with a follow-up survey. As a result of COVID-19's impact on our business, we put the follow-up on hold until now, and on Monday, March 7th, issued a new employee engagement survey. Again, this was administered by Kimberly Kane of Kane Communications, a third-party organization, and the responses being sent to them with the employee submissions being anonymous. We are presenting the findings of this survey to the entire staff next Thursday. Over the course of the summer, with the involvement of Nyla Tuxen, our new VP of HR, we will be developing our action plan when addressing the concerns that we believe are important to the staff and for the growth of the organization. The expectation is to roll these out in September or October. Kimberly Kane is here now to present to you an executive summary of those findings.
Marty, thank you very much. It's great to be here with all of you today to talk about the results of the 2022 survey and also to talk about some of the accomplishments that we've seen post-2018 survey. This is such an important time for us to be evaluating or getting a pulse check of how our workers feel, especially for the Wisconsin Center District, considering the expansion goals that we have ahead and the need for talent, and considering the time we are in today, the talent crisis. While many organizations are really struggling with this talent crisis challenge, there is a new movement of leaders underway right now that are embracing the opportunity to take control of their talent development efforts, and they're unleashing tremendous organizational change through the transformative power of continuous improvement. So these organizations are using data-driven decision-making methods to gain a huge competitive advantage in the war on talent. So we do have, here we go. Got it. All right. So here's how we'll get into the survey results today. I always like to start with trends. That gives us real context for what we're about to talk about. We'll get into the approach that we took with the survey. I'll get into top-level findings, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So a few months ago, Fortune magazine released the results of a survey they do every year with CEOs. They tap into what are the top concerns of CEOs for this year. And going into 2022, the top concern on the minds of CEOs across the country is no surprise, the Great Resignation. Over the past year, we have seen record numbers of employees leaving their jobs for new ones. Some are dropping out of the workplace entirely. We've seen a tremendous number of retirements as well. In February alone, 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs, and we know that Wisconsin is not immune from this. Interestingly, this is not a blip on the radar based on what I'm seeing, and I'm talking with organizations nationally about this. Due to market forces, the talent crisis is expected to extend well beyond 2022. And in fact, Forbes magazine recently pointed out that by 2030, the global talent shortage, so there's a shortage of talent on the other side of this, could reach 85.2 million people, resulting in the loss of trillions of dollars in economic opportunity. So the ability to attract, retain, and engage a diverse workforce is likely to remain the single biggest challenge and opportunity that modern business leaders face in the foreseeable future. Some of you may know that my team conducted a statewide survey. This was about 8 months ago or so, taking a look at the issues behind this trend. So we see the numbers, but what the heck is driving these numbers? What's going on? We looked specifically at the impact of the pandemic on working women here in the state of Wisconsin, and we looked at ways that employers can improve the workplace to create a modern work environment where female employees thrive. Interestingly, this year, there's been a tremendous amount of research that has been done on this issue, and the research that's coming out, a market research firm in Seattle did a study that really validated what we found and also said, the issues that we uncovered in the workplace are issues facing not just women, but the same issues that are facing men today. And these are issues, again, that are causing individuals to quit their jobs, seek employment at other companies, or drop out of the workforce entirely. And let's be clear, turnover is generally not good for companies, especially companies like the Wisconsin Center District that are growing and in need of talent in order to reach the organization's goals. Gallup research, this study came out showing that the cost of replacing an employee is typically 1/2 to 2 times of that person's salary, depending on the seniority and the sophistication of his or her skills. So at pre-pandemic levels, this was 2017, turnover rates translated into nearly $1 trillion a year for U.S. businesses. And Gallup said that picture is likely rosy compared to where we are today in this COVID and post-COVID era. So as Wisconsin Center District heads into this historic time of expansion, preventing turnover is a business imperative. It really is. And Marty and I have talked about this. So preventing turnover and attracting talent, becoming an employer of choice, having a workplace where employees thrive are really business priorities. Interestingly, though, workplace expectations are different today. So as we headed into the pandemic, 2018, 2019, people had a specific perspective on what they expected from their workplace, and leaders had a specific perspective on how to lead, manage, retain, recruit employees. All of that has changed dramatically. And a recent Harvard Business Review article pointed this out. They said this inflection point in history presents an unprecedented opportunity for organizations. Leaders who can rapidly pivot to meet employees where they are at, searching for meaning, yearning to grow, wanting to work for personal fulfillment as much as compensation, can tap into the largest pool of talent on the move in several generations. Organizations can aspire also to attract valuable new talent rather than resigning themselves to loss. The solution to today's talent crisis requires a completely different playbook than many of us are used to working from. And writing that new one will require leaders to challenge stereotypes, to test new ideas, to be open to feedback, and be willing to change. Now, I think it's also important for me to point out that WCD is not just reacting to these trends. The district has been leading through these trends, beginning in 2018 with that survey that we did together. The changes then that the Wisconsin Center District has made as a result of that 2018 survey. And then the fact that the district is continuing this continuous improvement really puts this organization ahead of so many companies. And again, I'm speaking with organizations nationally about this. While many of them are interested in doing surveys, getting the feedback back is really hard for them, and then implementing the findings of the feedback often doesn't happen, and WCD is doing that. So here's how we approach the survey. We take a look at, of course, the national context, but then we also want to take a look at what the organization's business goals are. That helps us design the survey and the questions. And WCD's goals are to ensure that 100% of employees can tell event attendees about the WCD venue, the venues that WCD owns and operates, and that they know what it means to act on WCD's rallying cry to be bold, be proud, be experience obsessed. WCD also wants to become an employer of choice to meet current and future staffing demands at the venues, and of course with the expansion right around the corner. So as we approach the survey, there are some times when we actually have to keep the survey open a little bit longer just to hit our goals in terms of the number of responses. We didn't have to keep the survey open an extra amount of time this year, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We kept the survey open for 2 weeks, and then as we analyzed the data, we were able to group the data, the findings, into these categories based on what we learned. Respondent demographics, the Net Promoter Score, the employment experience and vision alignment, also the strength of our culture, and then we took a look at communication methods. So some of the positives that we found, did I skip a slide? Hold on a second. Nope, okay. Here we go. So positives we found were a real increase in survey participation. So remember, we didn't have to keep the survey open longer. The first time we did the survey in 2018, I think we had to keep it open about an extra week. In this case, we had it open for 2 weeks. Not only did we keep it open just the amount of time that we had predicted, but we saw a dramatic increase in participation rates, 61.9% in 2022 compared to 52.7% in 2018. When you look at surveys, one of the questions is, well, what is good in terms of a response rate? Anywhere from 25% to 50% is pretty average. We hit 61.9%. We also saw an increase in the Net Promoter Score. We got an 18 Net Promoter Score in 2022 compared to an 8 in 2018. So what the heck is a Net Promoter Score? The NPS is a gold standard for measuring employees' current experiences, and it really helps to predict growth over time. So we asked employees, how likely is it that you would recommend working at WCD today to a friend or a colleague? So the 2022 score, again, represents a 10-point increase. This is especially significant given the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic shut down event operations for an extended period of time, and it led to staff layoffs. So employees are engaged, they have faith and trust in the organization, And despite that change, they gave the district a score of 10 points higher. How is the Net Promoter Score calculated? Well, the NPS is the difference between the percentage of employees that are promoters minus the percentage of employees who are detractors. People in the middle are called passives, and they represent the greatest opportunity on your journey to becoming an employer of choice. So in this survey, we saw more than a 20% increase in the number of promoters and passives, and we saw a 26% decrease in the number of detractors. So in the world of NPS, anything above a 0 is a positive. I know that Wisconsin Center District is really shooting for a significant growth in the NPS. A 50 is considered excellent, a 70 is considered world-class, but that 10-point jump during a time of significant change for the organization indicates that we're making excellent progress. Getting into some of the positives now, employees report that communication between leaders and employees is good. I put this at the top because in 2018, we found a significant divide between the leaders and employees, and that divide, that lack of communication, also led to a lack of trust. In 2022, we saw a 268% increase in the number of employees who strongly agree that communication between leaders and employees is good. Among the areas employees pointed out as important to them, they said free parking is very important. They have really good relationships with their coworkers, and that's very important to having an engaged and stable workplace. They also cite flexible work schedules as extremely important. BPX, be bold, be proud, be experience obsessed, is well understood, it's embraced, and the survey showed us that BPX actually motivates employees to do more and to bring ideas to the table. We found that employees really trust their coworkers and their supervisors. In fact, 80% of employees in the survey said they trust their coworkers, and 80% said they trust their supervisors. We found that even more of them, about 84%, when they have a challenge, they say they have someone at WCD that they can turn to for support and guidance. Employees are proud of the work they do here at Wisconsin Center District, and 84% of them stated the work they do is meaningful. And when we look in the context of what's happening nationally and what's happening here in the state of Wisconsin, being proud of the work we do, finding the work we do meaningful is critical to keeping employees engaged and retaining employees. Here are some examples from the qualitative feedback that employees shared about BPX in action. And you can read through these comments, but you'll see employees really are watching each other. They're learning from each other. They're watching their supervisors, and they recognize BPX in action. And it's been great to see employees recognize each other for living the values and the mission of the organization. In terms of opportunities, well, we did see a significant improvement in how employees feel about communication between leaders and employees. They want more information. Employees really want to know what's happening across the department, and they want even more insight from the leadership team. Employees also want more training and more professional development, and when you look nationwide at what employees say they want from their employer, this is a common theme, especially when it comes to retaining diverse talent. Diverse talent say they want more training, they want more professional development in their jobs. Employees also want to be recognized for their achievements. We heard Marty point a couple of employees out at the beginning of the presentation. Employees are doing good work. They don't want to do it in a vacuum. They want you to recognize them and let them know they're doing good work. They do want to see more diverse staff at all levels of the organization. They recognize that the district is taking steps to build a diverse and inclusive environment, but they want to see more staff promotions of diverse employees internally, and they want to see the hiring of more diverse employees as well. Mental wellness also showed up loud and clear in the survey, where employees really want to deeply understand the kinds of programs that WCD has in place to help manage stress, and they want to know that their employer cares about their mental wellness. In terms of next steps, as Marty mentioned, we'll be sharing this information with employees next week at the all-staff meeting. And it's great to know with a new HR leader on board, I mean, there are already steps in motion to take a closer look at the findings and look at how we can, build these findings and what we've learned into the foundation for changes that will further improve the workplace experience and the workforce here at the Wisconsin Center District. That's all I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
How many total employees were polled?
307.
Okay, so 61% of that responded.
Exactly.
And was this all employees, including management, or just the,
All employees.
okay?
Yeah, including part-time employees. Absolutely.
Hi, I wanted to ask questions, Alderwoman Jocasta Samaripa. What percentage of those employees were the janitors and the servers, the bartenders?
So 307 employees were polled, were given the chance to take the survey. 125 part-time employees participated in the survey, and nearly 70 full-time employees participated in the survey. So I don't have the specific job breakdown.
Anecdotally, can you speak to it? Do you feel like you heard from, would those servers and janitors, would they be in full-time positions, or they're only part-time?
I can't, answer that question.
Jocasta, we have a combination of full and part-time in housekeeping and setup. They were all included in the survey. I believe 60% of total respondents came from the part-time staff, which would be made up by housekeeping, setup, and guest services staff.
And if I'm not mistaken, there'd be no food service, correct?
Correct. Food service is handled by Levy, and they are not our employees, and therefore we're not included in the survey.
So no bartenders, servers are included in this?
Correct.
Okay.
No food service personnel were part of this. It was our housekeeping staff, full and part-time, and our setup and takedown staff, full and part-time.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so, but you can't speak to the housekeeping staff, like their participation? You can't give me like specific numbers right now?
Not off the top, but we do have a breakdown of numbers of people who responded. We can get you that offline.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation.
Absolutely.
One more. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Building on your report, the state of working women in Wisconsin, and if you covered this, I'm sorry, but notable differences between genders in the responses?
We didn't notice notable differences between genders in the responses.
Thank you.
This net promoter score business, 18 actually sounds not so good based on the criteria you set forth, 50 being good and 75 being world-class.
It is good, and it's a significant improvement from 2018. I've done net promoter scores with companies, and they've come out at -64.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's the context. I mean, that sounds like a nice measuring stick, but compared to what?
Exactly. So the NPS can go as low as -100. It can go as high as 100. So that's the range that it can go. Many organizations do start in the red, and they have employees who are not engaged. Lack of trust between employees and administration is significant. So we started in the black with an 8. We've made a 10 percentage point or 10-point improvement during such a difficult time in the economy. And then the results we have today will create additional traction.
So you're saying in the current world of the private sector or quasi-private sector, anything positive is good?
Anything positive is good.
Okay.
And Bob, the purpose of the 2018 survey was to get a baseline for where we were. The fact that we were positive, I was shocked in 2018. We're not satisfied with an 18, and that's why we will continue to do this and modify our operation to address the employees' concerns.
And these intentional steps, again, I'm working with organizations across the country right now, are just beginning to take root, just beginning to gain steam because of the economic impact on organizations. They just can't function without talent. So the fact that we already have momentum and WCD is already leading in this really does put you ahead of the curve.
Along those lines, are we having challenges hiring? I mean, are we fully staffed? Do we have vacancies? Do we have any issues along those lines?
We're always Pre-COVID, we were always backfilling with part-time positions, and we continue to be challenged. We are not critically understaffed, but we are constantly recruiting for full and part-time personnel, as are all businesses in the area.
Okay.
Anything else I can share with you? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kimberly. Very good.
That concludes our portions of the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Great. One
Marty?
last. Go ahead. Was there a question?
Yes, it's Alderwoman Zamaripa again. I just wanted to commend you on the first part of the presentation. You showed us the video of the kids from Carmen High School at the construction site. I actually observed that happening. I was leaving or coming into downtown, and I was wondering what the kids were doing there. Now I know. And I encourage you to please, if we can keep doing this, because I know we need to get more folks interested in the trades and in construction, and that's a perfect way to do it. And just thank you so much, and thanks for making that video very moving, and I hope we keep doing it again and again with more kids and more schools.
I appreciate you highlighting that. When we were interviewing both architectural firms as well as construction firms, Gilbane and EUA and CD Smith made that part of their presentation on how important it is for other projects. So we've embraced it here. We'll continue to embrace it. And while differently, it does bring up a point that I had neglected to acknowledge, and that is we're working with Icon and Gilbane to put together a schedule of when we can provide all of the board members hard hat tours of the construction site. So when we get some dates from them, we'll share them with the board, and we'll invite you to come be our guests with the proper PPE and get you out and take a look at the site so you can really experience it. Because the video and the pictures do not capture the enormity of what's going on this facility. It's really mind-boggling what's going on behind the construction fence. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else before I turn over to Kirk? All right. Kirk Pelican, brief update.
And while it's listed for closed session, there's not a need to do so. So just a really high level. We've had occasion to have been party to a lawsuit, 3 recent cases. 2 of those cases involved, actually all 3 of those cases involved injuries at the Fiserv Forum. The district had notified the Deer District of the cases, asserted its indemnification, and the Deer District has assumed that defense. I will share with you in one of those cases, though, we've already been dismissed in its entirety. Any further questions on that, I'll take offline.
Great, thanks, Kirk. Future board meeting dates are set up in the meeting schedule on the last page of your packet. The next full board meeting will be Friday, that's today, Friday, August 19th, 2022. Again, if there's conflicts, please let us know as far as in advance as you can. We're trying to keep the number to a minimum, so if you can attend, that would be greatly appreciated so we don't have to have one every month. I know Marty loves prepping for these once a month, so I think we have 8 this year. And if you do have future meeting date or discussion items, please feel free to send those over to us, and we'll put them on the agenda as needed or address offline as needed. We want to continue to have a fully interactive board meeting like today, so I appreciate that and appreciate everybody's time, efforts, and energy. Have a great kickoff to the Memorial Day weekend this weekend in advance, and we will see you all in August, if not before. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? All in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the board meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.